So let me talk a little bit about Whurley, which is his legal name. He's the moderator for tonight. And VLab, as you know, if you're sitting in the seats, everybody has a flyer. And you can read a lot about him. But one of the things that we try to do is always to draw out that human aspect. Because like you, the panelists are the same, except they happen to be up here and you're down there. And they're entrepreneurs and venture capitalists and men about the world like Hurley. And I asked him, I said, tell us something that's not on your resume. Something that people aren't going to read in the flyer. So I said, something that makes you kind of human like me. And he said, well, when I'm not hanging out with Snoop Dogg, which he does, when he's not in a funk band, which he is, when he hasn't traveled 42 hours straight to be at this event, which he has, he is just a normal guy like you and me. So let me introduce him right now, and we can get started.
I'm very excited to see so many people here tonight talk about augmented reality, and I always worry about intros like that. I also have 10 minutes I have to fill, so that was like 30 seconds of it. But on a serious note, this is a really good, amazing panel we have tonight. I think the venue's great. All of the teams, we should give them a quick round of applause. They've done a great job of putting this event together. And there we go. So what we wanted to do was kind of level set. How many of you are familiar with augmented reality out in the audience? So almost all of you. And when we say familiar, does that mean you have an iPad app or an iPhone app that does AR? Or you actually built one? How many people? Okay, so it's kind of a mix. So familiar gets skewed really easy. So what we wanted to do was, about a year and a half ago when we started Chaotic Moon, we were doing a lot of augmented reality. And a guy named Lee Lefevre called us and asked us to collaborate on a video that we're going to show right now. It's about 2 minutes. It's just a very generic overview. I know some of you are more experts than others. We're going to kind of level set the whole room with the video and then talk about a little bit about the history, the present, and where we're going in the future. And then we'll turn it over to Bruno, who's going to do a presentation, and we'll start our panel questions. So here we go.
I think we can all agree that reality is pretty great. It's what we experience through our senses, like our eyes, and phones with cameras. The internet is awesome too, but the internet and reality have a hard time working together. Thankfully, this is changing quickly. New tools mean that the world around you can now be seen with a layer of new information from the internet. This is augmented reality, explained by Commoncraft. If you've ever seen a movie with a fighter pilot, you've seen the pilot's view from the cockpit. But something's missing. The pilot needs a layer of information that adds useful items to his view of reality. Recently, this kind of layer started working on your smartphone, but instead of flight data, you have data about the world around you. It's augmented reality. Let's say you're hungry and at a busy intersection. There are multiple restaurants around you, but you don't have a good way to make the decision. Now, thanks to new software on mobile phones, you can simply point your phone's camera at buildings around you, and voila! Restaurants are magically recognized and a layer of information about the restaurant appears on the screen. Another example is shopping. You can point your camera at a product and see a layer of information about it, like prices of the same product at other stores in the area or on the internet. And this functionality only requires a few things. First, a smartphone with a camera to capture reality. Second, a connection to the internet for receiving the layer of information. Third, software on your phone to bring it all together. It also helps to have a phone with GPS and a compass to help establish your location. Augmented reality can also work with a camera attached to your computer. You can hold products in front of the camera and see a layer of information on your screen that makes reality more interesting and even fun. These examples are just the beginning. In the future, you may wear glasses that have a tiny display that you can see while walking. As you walk by stores, buildings, people, and products, this screen displays information from sites like Wikipedia or Google. Suddenly, your reality is richer and more interesting. It's coming, but augmented reality has a long way to go. Keep your eye out for ways that augmented reality adds layers of new information to your reality.
So we know he's Lee Lefevre, so I'm skipping that. But that's a really, really basic view, like a very, very low-level view, and obviously very smartphone-centric and very focused on all of the things that you've seen augmented reality kind of pick up this new buzz, which happens every few years in it lately with the iPhone and all of the applications. This is the Wikipedia definition of augmented reality. And basically, what everybody has sort of agreed is augmented reality is when we take data and we overlay it on some view. And what I'd like us to do tonight is kind of challenge that definition. Because I would argue that Google Maps on your phone is augmented reality, that without your phone and those maps, you don't have any sense of direction naturally built in. So I think that augments your reality. So one of the things we're going to talk about with the panelists tonight, and one of the things we want to drive home, is not only kind of thinking about this from some different perspectives, but more importantly, kind of challenging some of the definitions, using the advantage we have with these amazing panelists to really get a lot of their experience out. We also want some questions in from you guys. And we're going to talk about a lot of things, but here's a basic history. Augmented reality seems so new to some people and so old to others. How many of you think that this is a new technology? Show of hands. All right, so everybody else has known about it forever, right? No? Really? All right. Well, it's actually not too new. It depends on how you look at it. In the 50s, there was a guy who created a system called Sensorama, which involved a whole bunch of different sensory augments and things like that. And so a lot of people like to go all the way back there and say, well, that was the real, first augmented reality example. And people can debate that forever, and we'll look at that in many different ways. The common definition of when it was started is about 1990. A guy named Tom Caudell was working at Boeing. And at Boeing, they were working on the fuselage of planes. And he created a system where you could see where the wires were, because if you cut through the wires in a plane, you threw the fuselage away. It was really expensive. And so a lot of people give him credit for coining the phrase augmented reality and give him credit for being kind of one of the early pioneers in that industry. But in 1992, there was a gentleman who created a thing called virtual fixtures, which is often looked at as the first actual real working AR system. And it was pretty interesting. It involved a couple of different sensory things that were tied together in a pretty interesting way. But then you get to kind of present day or closer to present day, and around early 2000, a lot of things started popping up, and they were all games or advertising. How many of you have used augmented reality in a way that is not a game or an advertisement, or helps you find a cool restaurant? All right, and so now we have like 5 hands in the audience. And those are some of the things we want to talk about tonight. We want to find out, where are the entrepreneurial opportunities? Where are the opportunities for your business to integrate this now? We want to talk about, is it an industry or is it just a feature? And if it's just a feature, why haven't all of you added it already? Right? I'd be really curious to know that. How many of you are looking at integrating augmented realities either into a new business plan as an entrepreneur or into an existing product? What are the rest of you doing? Why are you here? Okay, so moving on, this is like a basic kind of map of, again, we see it in advertising, we see it in navigation, and art right now are primarily the 3 categories if you go to the iTunes store and you download it. In art, there's a lady named Helen Papagenius who's done some really interesting stuff. She's done children's books and big art displays and walls. In advertising, Vivian, who's on our panel tonight, is doing a lot in that area. We have Bruno, who's done a lot across all of these areas, and Jay, who works with Qualcomm, has been building a tool set for all of these, and Manu is hopefully can tell us a lot about investing and how he looks at this from an investment perspective. But I have some questions for you, and that is, since so many of you are familiar with this, why hasn't it performed better? And this is one of the things we're going to talk about. If you go and you look at the iTunes store and you take all the data, the best-selling augmented reality app ever is, or download, however you want to look at it, because some are free, some are charged, is Layer. It's never broken the top 100 across the store, ever. Done really well in navigation, done really well in a couple subcategories. The highest point it ever reached was 234. So if this is a great new technology, if this is the future, if this is what you're going to start your businesses on and he's going to invest in and things are going to happen, why aren't you using it more? Is it bad user interface? Is it technical difficulties? Somebody's shaking their head at user interface and know what technical difficulties. There's a lot of reasons, and I think you can argue each one of those. Some people tell you it's a fine user interface. Some people tell you that holding a camera like this is an insane way to look at the world, right? Some people would tell you the tool sets are there. Some people will tell you that there's too many restrictive licenses and that the open source toolkits aren't good enough. So we're going to cover some technology as well tonight. We're not just going to talk about the entrepreneurial opportunities. So we want to talk about the experience. We want to talk about what opportunities there are for you to take things you learned tonight and leave here and go do something with them. right? That's my job, is hopefully to not just moderate, but translate and help get that information communicated out so that tomorrow, next week, whenever, you start thinking about how this affects your business today. You start thinking about what you can do, what business opportunities can you start. If you need a VC to talk to, well, there's one on the panel. All of these guys are going to hang out afterwards if you have questions that you want to ask them directly. But there's a lot of things going on here, and I'm hoping that tonight at Stanford, at VLab, with all of the great people in the audience and the people I met upstairs at the reception, that some of you are going to be the people who change AR. That video that ended with, like, the future is a little sketchy, I'm hoping some of you will help bring some clarity to that. I'm hoping some of you will have a new idea that makes the user interface better, that makes a better toolkit, that provides some basis for there to be a lot more opportunity. There is nothing standing between you and this technology. The panel is called Terminator Vision, and that gives you this kind of very futuristic, very high-end technology aspect. There is nothing between you and building a business around this or incorporating in your business right now at all. So hopefully tonight you're going to get your questions answered so you can not only figure that out, but you can get a task list so that you can get a bead on the future on how you can use this stuff. Whenever I go around and talk about augmented reality, at the end of it, people are like, oh, that's super fancy technology stuff. It's not. There's some hard problems to be solved. There's some problems that have been solved by some of our panelists and others that are still waiting to be solved by people like you. But hopefully tonight you'll be inspired, you'll be informed, and you'll go out and you'll do something with this. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bruno, who has a short presentation for us.
Thanks for the introduction. So how many of you have lived an AR experience? Okay, so very, very few. So what I suggest is I'm going to start with a real-time presentation so you can see live what is augmented reality. So there is a ton of examples, but I just choose one which is like 6 weeks old. So can we switch to the other presentation? So here we go. So basically here, I'm going to use this computer. That's a normal computer, nothing special with that computer. I'm going to use a webcam. It could be an integrated webcam or an external webcam. And that's all I need to start triggering an AR experience. So that app is about being able to try glasses in real time. So basically here, I am live on the web. And I can try different pair of glasses. So I can click here, and I can see myself with a different one. And as you can see, we've been working hard in order to get these glasses as real as possible. I mean, if we want augmented reality to be a success, you have to get a good tracking, you have to get a good rendering, and you have to get an easy solution that's going to work on a normal computer. So basically here what you see is, first of all, we can recognize a face. That's step number one. Step number two is I can track my face. So you can see that wherever I'm going, the 3D object is perfectly matched on my face. And then the third step is what we call rendering, which is now that we know where my face is, we can superimpose any 3D animation in real time. So it could be eyewear, it could be a hat, it could be hairs, it could be makeup, and so on. So here, my face is the way to trigger the experience, but of course, it could be a trading card, it could be a business card, it could be, anything, a paper, a newspaper that's going to be a way to start a world where we can emerge 3D into a real-time video. So I was just willing to start with this quick demonstration so you know exactly what I'm talking about. So going back to the presentation, I'm going to talk about Immersion. That's a company that I started like more than 12 years ago. And so at that time, augmented reality was really limited. So even if we were very excited starting Immersion, we were 2 at the beginning, we had some tough issues. First of all, hardware. Quick story, the first presentation I did for like the first 5 years, I needed 2 big computers, 2 suitcases. One computer for the rendering, one computer for the tracking. And it was like 45 minutes installation, sweating in front of the client. I mean, it was a disaster. And definitely here, the first limitation we got at that time was hardware. The second one was market adoption. I did so far approximately 1,000 meetings talking about augmented reality. Once again, for the first 4 or 5 years, everybody was saying, wow, that's cool. That's a great technology. And then the last word, we just have to figure out how we're going to use it. So figure out became our worst nightmare. I mean, each time we come back to the office, it was figure out. Okay, they will never call us back again. So, that was really a limitation here was, this market adoption. Nobody knew about augmented reality, and they didn't know how they're going to use it. Third one was consumer. I mean, think about like 10, 12 years ago, nobody had video camera functionality around you. I mean, today it's easy. You have your phone, you have your computer, you have your TV that start getting some video functionality. But like 12 years ago, it was nowhere. So for sure, it was tough for someone to understand how they're going to use augmented reality. So the two pictures that you have here on the left side is the first AR experience we did in 2001. Just a simple tiger, no animation into video. We were so excited, but that's the first picture. And then also the second step was 2007. We did a very important presentation at Demo, close to here. And we had a pretty significant buzz, and this is where it started. A lot of limitation, but as every entrepreneur, we had a lot of passion. We were sure it's going to take 2 or 3 years to become Steve Jobs. And after 12 years, we're still not there yet, but we're still working on it. A decade later, what happened? I think that definitely here, a lot of things changed. First of all, hardware. As I said previously, on your phone, you have now a video camera. On your computer, you have a video camera. On your TV, you are going to have shortly a video camera. So all of these are fantastic devices for us to start triggering action with augmented reality. What has changed is that we are not just making a cool presentation. We are making money out of augmented reality. So basically here, total immersion does generate revenues. We are a 95-people team. We reached profitability last year after 11 years. Wow. And it has been tough. I mean, we still needed some venture capital at that time. But anyway, we delivered so far 1,000 AR experience since 2008. There are very, very, very few companies, maybe in 1, 2, or 3, that delivered so many AR application. And I just noticed that you have on that book, the graph. I won't say that all of it are total immersion, but I will say that most of them are total immersion. Tops is total immersion. Citroën is total immersion. Many others. Infinity, the first one, is total immersion. Of course, there are other players, but I would say that most of them are coming from total immersion. So it's a business for us. It's not like just a technology. We are building a business on top of augmented reality. What have been and what are still some key challenges? First of all, when you're working in such innovative markets, you need money. I mean, for sure, we went through investors. I think that we have been lucky at that time. It would have been more difficult today to work and to find some money to work on a such innovative market. But at that time, we did find some investors, first business angels, then first round, second round. So we do have venture capital that's invested into the company. And it's true that when you start a business, especially in that market, such innovative market, when you need evangelization, you need education, so it's going to take a few years to be where we are today. You need to have some help in terms of investors. AR, it's a mix of different technology. When you're an entrepreneur, the most important is building a team. If you don't have a team, you are nobody. So, and especially in the augmented reality space, where you have rendering, where you have computer vision, where you have real time, you had to find out a team where you can have multiple assets and you can get the team working together and reaching where we are today. Third one, it's a no-brainer that today you need to be international. So I started a company in France, as I guess you all understood my French accent. So we are still 55 in France. And then I moved 4 years ago to Los Angeles, so where we are now 25. And we also have 2 other offices in Hong Kong and Japan. So definitely today, when you want to tackle such an innovative market, you have to be everywhere. Your clients, they want to work with you in the same time zone. They don't want to have like 6-9 hours difference. And it is a challenge, especially for a small company like Total Immersion. It is a challenge in terms of communication, but we are working on a day-to-day basis on that. And we had to find client. I say, this figure out worst nightmare. We had to find one client to invest into total immersion. And finally, we find one, I would say, and it was a deal changer for the company. We had the privilege working a lot with James Cameron on the Avatar movie, and we did three very important projects that changed our life, I would say, forever. The first one is we worked with Mattel on some augmented reality toys, and I think it's on the brochure. We worked with McDonald's, on how the Big Mac box was a way to triggering action for a consumer. And we worked with also Coke, how the Coke can was the way to get action into the movie. So definitely, once you start a company, at certain time you need luck. You need to find the one who's going to say, I'm going to bet on that company. I'm going to go for it. It was 7 figures revenue for us, so crazy important. And it worked, and that's the reason we're still here today. So that was the slide I was preparing for the real-time demo when I realized that I needed to make the real-time demo in advance. But basically here, what we sell is truly an experience where we can transform, I would say, a passive guest, a passive gamers, into an active performers. Everybody wants to be into the game. Everybody wants to participate and to communicate with the brand. When you want to buy a product, you want to have it almost in your hand. You want to try it in real time. So this is what augmented reality is doing. Whatever devices you're going to use, a phone, a tablet, a computer, you want to be part of the experience. You want to see yourself inside the experience. And this is what we sell to our clients. I'm used to saying we are very lucky to say we sell magic and sparks. I mean, every time people are impressed by what can be done with augmented reality, and this is the essence of our business. Trends and analysts. So here it's a funny one. I mean, everybody's saying augmented reality is going to be huge, big. In 2015, 16, it's going to be a 1.5, a $2 billion market. I wish it's true, so I'm going to have very quickly my private jet. But I'm challenging slightly these kind of figures, especially, less than 2 million today in 2010. That's not true. Total immersion, we had much more than that. So it shows how this market is not very mature because even analysts, they have some issue to understand where we are coming from and where we are going. I wish this, as I said, this 1.5 billion 2015 is true, but I have to challenge it a little. Especially when you look at that graph that we just picked up in the Los Angeles Times a few days ago. They are projecting close to 1 billion AR application in 2016. Well, I don't know where this is going to come from. And I've been 12 years in that business, and I should know, but I have to be frank and honest with you. I don't know. So once again, here, even if everybody thinks it's going to be huge, it's going to be a massive market, yes, when I think that it's still a challenge that we have not yet totally resolved. But we have to say that market is maturing. For sure, we start seeing major players getting into the game. Microsoft with the Kinect, that's a first step to augmented reality. I mean, when you can see and you can start getting movement with your body, that's for us, even if it's not truly augmented reality, that's for us a first step to augmented reality. And we see others. I mean, just for information, Intel just invested 6 months ago into the company because they see a lot of application using a lot of CPU, by the way, so this is and definitely that's very important. We just had also KDDI, which is a Japanese mobile operator that invested recently into the company. Hardware is evolving. What you have on the iPhone 4S today is what we had in a computer 5 years ago. So for sure, we can start reaching the consumer using what you have in your pocket, which means a smartphone. So definitely here, this is time for us for a massive adoption. And end user becomes more familiar. For sure, you start getting more and more. I mean, I was used to ask the same question. How many of you heard about augmented reality like 5 years ago? Nobody. Today, a lot of people heard about it, and it's true that it's facilitating our expansion. From gimmick to product is important. Each time I hear about augmented reality, I hear, well, that's gimmicky. You know it's going to be here for a few years, and then it's going to disappear. Well, it's 12 years, and we're still here. And we are entering into a mode where we are going from gimmick application to true product application. And this eyewear example that I just did, we did a survey actually with a consumer that I can't share all of it with you, but I can start sharing some of the results. 78% of people said that they would love to use augmented reality online when they're buying products. Whatever, if it is an eyewear, a hat, a furniture, they want to start seeing how what they're going to buy will look like in their environment. So here it's, I won't say it's yet the killer app, but we're getting very, very close. 38% are saying yes, they would buy more. It's not yet a crazy number, but it starts to be good. Finally, I would say that, and some of the leaders of AR are here today, we need to rally together. I think that it's not one company that we're going to revolutionize augmented reality. It's many companies together. We can't fake it. I think it's important. We are every time measuring metrics, so we know when it works and we know when it doesn't work. We did some crazy good campaign and we did some very bad campaign. We need to move beyond the gimmick. That's what I just said. I mean, how we can find some concrete return on investment for our clients. It's my day-to-day business. Make it easy to use. We're here today, a phone, an iPad 2. iPad 2 is a good experience. We have a video cam, so we can start triggering action. And make everyday task easier. I just want here to open it slightly, saying that, yes, there are some advertising applications, there are some e-commerce applications, but you have a ton of other applications. We are currently working on medical application, how we can help a surgeon to see what he can't see normally. So, you know, it can be also for maintenance application. It could be for education application. So it's true that it's, even if it's still a 12 years old market for us, there are a lot of things that can be done. It's still a very emerging market. It's going to take time before we are reaching this billion-dollar market, but I'm sure that we'll be there shortly. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bruno. So we know who Bruno is. What I'd like to do is ask each of our panelists to introduce themselves very quickly, and then we'll get right into the questions. We'll start with Jay.
Sure. My name's Jay Wright. I'm a Senior Director for Business Development in Qualcomm's R&D division. And my team has responsibility for commercializing our non-radio technologies. The bulk of our efforts over the past few years have actually been in augmented reality and remains much of our focus today.
Hi, I'm Vivian Rosenthal, the founder and CEO of GoldRun. We're a mobile augmented reality platform that uses GPS and virtual goods to offer real-world rewards. And originally, I started off as an architect who was really seduced by this intermingling of our physical and digital lives. And I think that's what augmented reality is really going to fulfill, is that new sort of approach, hybrid approach to our future lives and selves.
So hi everyone, my name is Manu Kumar, and I'm with a seed stage fund that I started called K9 Ventures. And my focus is mostly on very early stage technology companies. And some of the companies that I have invested in have actually used a lot of computer vision as part of their products. And so that's kind of my focus here, is in terms of looking at just very cutting edge technologies and trying to figure out when you can really bring those cutting edge technologies to market.
Excellent. Also, we mentioned taking questions from you, and if you'd like to send the panelist a question, we have a system that will make it show up on the iPad here. All you have to do is text your question to 415-494-8522. And I thought that was going to be, I didn't know if that's on the next slide or not, but again, that number is 415-494-8522. It's also located at the bottom of the brochure in a little blue line. We want to make sure you have that because we're expecting a fair amount of questions from you. But in lieu of that, we brought our own questions. So I'd like to go through and ask each of the panelists, and Manu, I'll start with you. Just on a scale of 1 to 10, without any additional commentary, how would you rate the performance of entrepreneurial vision, entrepreneurial efforts in the augmented reality space over the last 10 years?
So the efforts I would rate highly, the results I would rate lower.
Yes. But Manu, I have to call you out and have you give me a number. So on the efforts, what would that number be?
So the efforts, I would give probably a 7 or an 8.
And the results?
The results, I would probably give about a 2 or a 3.
Okay. Vivian?
Yeah.
I wouldn't sort of differ so much, but I think that we're moving. I think Bruno was talking about the shift in technology that we've seen over the last 10, 12 years, and having worked in the worlds of 3D for the last 10 years, and you see that the technology is getting to a point where I think we're going to catch up on the execution with the vision. Mm-hmm. So I think we're getting there.
So would you go 7 and 3 as well?
I'd say we're starting to get to a 4 or 5, and that's quickly gonna change, though. Really, almost overnight, we're gonna really reach this tipping point.
Jay, what are your opinions?
I guess I'll stick to the same 2 dimensions.
Really?
Efforts, I'm going to put at a 9. There's at least 2 companies that have been in this for a while. I mean, both Total Immersion and Matayo, I think, who have just done a tremendous job of evangelizing this technology. I mean, if you guys have been at these kind of conferences, you've seen Bruno's face many a times doing these kinds of things. And I think they've just huge effort. And then on the results side, let me just caveat my results number by saying it's to be expected. I'd put results at probably a 3, but we're fighting an adoption curve here, and there's only so many things you can do to make that adoption curve go faster. So I think that's the best that we can expect, and it's just the nature of the process.
Bruno?
Yeah, same. I think that like 12 years ago, a lot of effort for almost no results. But as Vivian said, it's currently shifting, and obviously we are, looking a lot at the AR space and the ecosystem. There are a lot of new companies like popping up, rising up right now because the ecosystem is more ready today than it was 12 years ago. So I'm anticipating that it will even go faster in the next couple of months and years.
Okay. So I'm really curious. We have a panel of augmented reality experts up here. And, I've had the benefit of seeing you guys on panels and being on panels with you before. I'm really pleased to moderate, but I have to start with a fairly tough question, which is on a daily basis, and Jay, if you don't mind, I'll start with you because you're the most likely to be able to answer this one. What augmented reality applications do you use? Or not even daily, what about weekly on your phone or otherwise?
That is an excellent question. That is an excellent question.
That's why I'm the moderator.
Yeah.
Not on your side.
I have to tell you, I'm in a somewhat enviable position in that we have a low-level tool set that a lot of developers are using, so I get this regular influx of applications that people have done. And so at any one time, there's probably 2 or 3 different games that I'm exploring and playing. So, the current one is actually, it's a billiards game, right? It's pool, and the pool table sits in front of you, and you can use your device and really take advantage of that ability to get all the way around and get perspective and line up your pool cue and do stuff. So I'm hooked on that one right now, and that's a good twice a day. We'll see what happens next week.
As soon as Angry Birds AR comes out, I know you're all going to be all over that. But
that would work.
Manu, do you use any augmented reality on a daily or weekly or monthly basis?
No, I don't use any that I would qualify as augmented reality. I use several applications that use computer vision in some way, shape, or form, but none of them that are actually trying to modify your view of the real world. So lots of computer vision applications. The one that I use almost on a daily basis is Card Munch for scanning business cards and getting them transcribed and put back into the phone. So.
Excellent. Vivian?
Daily I'm just testing my own application, which is GoldRun. So yeah, I mean, working every day to sort of refine different projects we're doing with clients and really trying to understand their desires, listening to what the corporations want to have happen.
So I've got to know, how many pictures do you have of yourself next to different movie stars and characters?
Well, we have done a lot of, I think our favorite is we put Betty White virtually in our office, and for some reason Betty White is like, more than anyone else, Betty White is she's the hit.
Wouldn't have guessed that one.
A way to reformulate your question is there any AR killer app today?
Yeah.
That's the question.
You can ask that one too.
If it's a killer app, then you're going to play it every day.
Yeah.
As I said, there is no killer app today available. I mean, it's taking time. Most of the business that we do is advertising. So it's a 1 week, 2 weeks, or 1 month period where you can activate the experience, and then it's done. What I'm hoping and what I'm anticipating is that one day people will buy online using augmented reality every day. Now, is it in 2 months, 6 months, a year, or 2 years? That's the challenge, and that's the moving part. But shortly, we're going to have a good answer to that question.
So augmented reality is also often associated with kind of this sense of wonder or amazement, right? A lot of time, people, the first time they see it, we build an application that allows you to track flight data and allows you to look up in the sky, and it's like, there's a plane. And I demoed it in Washington, D.C., and had 2 guys in suits tell me, the next time you do it, maybe you'd like to mount it to a bazooka. And then explain to me how I shouldn't be doing that demo anymore. But, when you look at it, everybody in the audience is like, wow, every time I see an AR demo, I see somebody, people are really impressed, they're really amazed. Do you think that that actually helps the industry and the adoption drive forward, or do you think it kind of sets the bar too high in some cases and makes people think it's unattainable and hurts it? Vivian?
Well, I mean, it's a great question, because I think one of the things that we all have to do collectively is figure out, what is that application that makes this usable by the masses. And certainly, I think if it is something that feels too futuristic, then it almost, prevents it from being adopted. So I think it's about finding a sort of a common ground between something that we are excited about collectively, but that is also approachable. And I think that that's how, the introduction of things like the iPad and the iPhone and they're done in such a way that you're not aware of all the complicated technology behind it. And I think that what we're all working on is really a way to distill what really is quite a complicated process, on the back end, and make it a very sort of fun, interactive, seamless experience. So that you do want to literally use it to augment whatever you are otherwise doing.
So given that and the fact that, so it sounds like we kind of maybe have heard it in a way, because maybe a lot of people aren't looking at it from enough of a practical standpoint, which leads the question for all the people in the audience, both investors and entrepreneurs and technologists alike. What are the opportunities, do you think, today in augmented reality? Where's there an opportunity? Where's there something missing that could be created either in a tool set or an application or any of those things that we kind of discussed in the precursor to this? Jay, do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think anything you do that helps a brand engage with a consumer at the point of advertising, whether that be a magazine or a newspaper or poster, at the point of sale in a retail location, or at the point of activity where they use the product, is a great place to be focused. Marketers are interested in this technology because it has that wow, and they're using it to drive engagement with brands. And to the extent you can figure out how to leverage a brand's value and their customers and create a really compelling experience that's in AR, you'll absolutely find an audience and willing partners and revenue.
So Bruno, that leads me to a question for you, which is, you've been around this as long or longer than anybody. And augmented reality, when I was at Apple, it was about what Tom Caudell was doing, about very mechanical, very utilitarian functions. And it seems like somewhere between then and now, we did get caught kind of on the games and advertising, almost as like that is augmented reality. That's kind of the soul of it. What opportunities do you see outside of games and advertising and shopping and stuff for augmented reality?
So I will, first of all, answer to your previous question.
Sure.
I think that AR is, we are overselling with AR. You were saying is the spark of AR, does it help or it doesn't help? I think that it doesn't help. Most of the time, not most of the time, on some project when we are, the first meeting, everybody's excited, we're going to go for it, and then at the end, well, that's it. This is what it does. Just a video and a cereal box. And I think that there is definitely, and more importantly, they paid a 6 figures number. So it's a lot of money, especially today. And at the end, they have like 100 activations. And then I don't want to answer the code anymore. I'm hiding, because we took that money and we don't want to say that we did it. But we have to be honest that sometimes we are not we, but the AR Sparks are overselling it, definitely. And it doesn't help because you are expecting easy use, great application. And we know that yet on the phone, I mean, even if we can have some good tracking and rendering, we can't use it easily. And even others working on GPS animation and information. Do you really see people working and doing this in the street? Come on. I mean, I don't want to this.
True.
It's not practical. So to answer your Sparks question, I think that doesn't help. Then I think that where it could, grow, it's definitely, I said e-commerce, but I think I'm a strong believer in e-commerce. I'm a strong believer also on medical application.
Okay.
And it will be, just think about something. Everybody has most of people, they have a tablet. So it will push also on the business side, some AR experiences into a factory, into a maintenance application. This is going to unlock a lot of application that we don't know yet, and it's going to be big.
So you'd say there's a lot of undiscovered area out there.
Yes.
So talking to that, Manu, and you can talk to that as well, but I'm especially interested in, as an investor, from an investor perspective, would you rather see a company that was an AR company, or would you rather see a company that uses AR?
So I will answer your question in a second. I will actually pick up on some of the themes and some of the other people touched on
Please.
first. First, the reason why augmented reality hasn't had the results that we're all hoping for is because there's hard technology involved in doing this, right? There are a lot of different technologies that need to actually come together at the right time in order for you to be able to do an augmented reality application. So the first thing you need cameras. You need the ability to do computer vision. You need location. You need sensor data. You need to have some sense of the real world. And so there's all of these pieces that need to basically come together. And what it's really coming together in as of right now is very much in the phones and in the iPad, right? So tablets and mobile phones is kind of where all this stuff is really coming together. Now, really tying back into your question about kind of the opportunities in this space, to me, one of the big open opportunities in this space is really in taking a lot of these individual siloed technologies. What do you do with location? What do you do with computer vision? What do you do with camera tech? And actually combining all of that together into a platform that then you can actually build stuff on top of, right? And that's the type of stuff that Qualcomm is kind of done some very great work in that area. And that to me is a whole opportunity in terms of actually being a platform for enabling these types of applications so that not every company and not every startup is going about reinventing the wheel, right? So to me, that platform needs to be created first, and the pieces for creating that platform are coming together now. So.
But are you going to invest in some companies just using an external platform?
So there are lots of so I'll give Unity as an example as a game engine, right? They're doing great business as a company, as Unity themselves, and there are lots of great gaming companies that are basically using the Unity engine.
So that kind of leads to another question. So let me interject this one. TCP/IP, clearly one of the great technologies that's made so much things happen. If you look at it, nobody made money off of TCP/IP, right? Directly. A bunch of people made money on top of it. Right. So do you think, and I'd like to get everyone's opinion, I'll start with you, Manu. Do you think that an open source or an open type project around AR to create that platform you're talking about would be something that maybe we're missing to really spur it? Because perhaps you don't have a problem investing in a game company that uses Unity or a company that uses a platform like Total Immersion or Qualcomm or whatever. But perhaps some other people do, or perhaps some entrepreneurs have some trepidation about basing their business on something else. Do you think we need a TCP/IP, if you will, of augmented reality that could kind of address what you just brought up?
So I would say you need some kind of platform, that you need a platform that makes some of this stuff easier to do. And in particular, the computer vision and the math part of this needs to be made easier. The rendering, a lot of the rendering and a lot of the graphic stuff is already become easier just because of the amount of hardware that you can now access on the mobile devices. But making some of the figuring out, like just being able to kind of identify an object and say, okay, track this object, right? Now, that's a very simple primitive that can exist in a platform that you can then use, right? So, and OpenCV is a great platform for doing computer vision, but you need OpenCV++. You need like a much bigger, broader version of OpenCV, which then has the ability to actually incorporate location information and sensor information and all of that stuff into that platform. Now, whether it's an open platform or whether it's a proprietary platform, I don't know the answer to that. That remains to be determined as to which platform.
Well, Jay, you've done a lot of work in this area specifically, both on the business development around it and the platform itself and everything. What are your thoughts?
You know, I think it depends what level platform you're talking about. I mean, the level that we're focused on is pretty much just, we can think about it as the computer vision engine. Right? And I think that low level kind of stuff, over time, if these applications are successful, that's probably stuff that you'd see in an operating system. And what we did is we looked at that and said, you know what, this is also a layer that really, really helps us or could help us differentiate our chipsets because it's so computationally intensive. It creates demand for higher-end chipsets, and it's something we can differentiate on ours by implementing it using our unique knowledge of our SoC. So we're making it available for free, and we'll continue to make it available for free. And I think that's natural for something that's at that level of the stack. I think you'll see other chip folks do things to software, low-level software to support their chip business, just like you'll see Google do a ton of software to support free that's supporting their advertising business.
Yeah.
Bruno?
Yeah, I just want to say that if you're also referring to open source, there is one open source technology available for like 10, 12 years is AR Toolkit. I don't know if you heard about it. It's pretty much well known in the AR ecosystem. It has not evolved a lot in the past 10 years. So what I want to say here is that if you are going 100% into an open source mode, it is not serving innovation. It is not serving also a product definition. And I think that it's fine to have some free software available to start building on top of it. But as we said, we always need to add a layer on top of it to make it different and to make it a real product compared to just open source.
Right. Well, open source is often created not by, it's kind of a product of necessity, right? So when Apache was created, it wasn't because there wasn't a web server, it was because Brian Behlendorf and those guys were contributing patches to the NCSA web server, and then Netscape was going to charge $5,000 CPU. And they said, we don't want to pay that. Yeah. So, a lot of people could argue that most open source products are created out of the lack of companies or services companies providing what is needed to a customer. The price is too high or it doesn't have the features. So you bring up a really interesting thing, Bruno, and I'd like to start with you, Vivian. Communities in open source. Recently, in the last couple of years, there's been things like the augmented reality event and some other things that have kind of picked up and started drawing a lot of people together. There's a fair amount of that in Europe. Communities are obviously important, whether it's proprietary or open source, to just sharing knowledge and doing stuff. What do you think the state right now in augmented reality is of kind of the communal aspect and how much people are sharing and communicating, and where could you point the audience to where they could go and participate in some of these things potentially to start gaining more knowledge as they look at integrating this into what they're doing?
Yeah, well, I think we have gotten to a point where I wouldn't say the technology is like ubiquitous, but there's enough options where people can use existing technologies. And so then it really points to, creativity, I think, and to storytelling and thinking about how people are engaged in the kinds of experiences that are being crafted. And that's where I think it's exciting when it starts to become, more community-driven or more about what people actually want to use it for. Because the sort of, as we said, we won't know quite, yet how the technology is going to evolve in the sense, is there going to be one dominant player or is it going to be open? So I think it's really about thinking about what are, in terms of the audience, like what are your objectives, for using augmented reality, and then thinking about it just as really an extension of what you're already doing. I mean, at GoldRun, we work with a lot of brands and a lot of ad agencies, and I constantly am telling clients, this can be just an extension of your, TV spot or your print campaign or your website. It doesn't have to be this siloed thing, and in fact, it shouldn't be siloed. And so, I constantly come back to like, once the technology is ubiquitous, then it's really about the experience. It's about sort of the creative application, what you do. It's like with the web. It's like, okay, once we all had access to the web, then well, what do you do with it? That differentiates you. And I think we still are in a space where people haven't figured out how to differentiate themselves in the AR space, but that will come quickly.
Jay, is Qualcomm doing anything on the community side with some of these tool sets and things of that nature? Are there communities that you would recommend people go and check out or get in tune with?
Yeah, there's an event specifically called the Augmented Reality event that happens up here in the Valley, and I think we just had the second annual one. I think that's the best developer-focused event that we've seen. Qualcomm, of course, has its own developer event, Uplink, that we have, and we talk a lot about augmented reality. But beyond that, I think most of the communities that you need to be a part of are online. I know we've got a pretty robust community that's been built up just around the Qualcomm SDK and a really vibrant developer forum where people continue to post and talk about their applications and what they're doing. There's an active community on LinkedIn for augmented reality, and a number of other places.
Bruno?
Yeah, and I would say that Qualcomm has slightly changed the game recently on that side. For many, many years, Total Immersion was hardly competing with Metaio. And, we both worked on a very closed mode. We don't want to open up our solution to anybody. And then Qualcomm came in, and we started to say, hey, we need to change the way we think about community. If we just want to be the only one to develop on AR, it's going to be tough to evangelize alone. So now I would say that the 3 or 4 main actors are going in that direction. We just released our free SDK like a few days ago. So everybody can start downloading it, playing with it, and deploy it. And I think that does refer to a way to deploy augmented reality is to really go and think community and to think standardization. I think that this will go together to all of us make AR a big success.
Excellent. Well, earlier you got up and you did this with your phone, yeah. And a lot of people chuckled. And I wrote an op-ed for Business Week on augmented reality where I kind of criticized the user interface. And earlier when we were talking about it, we had a gentleman sitting out there shaking his head yes again. It was like, yes, that interface is horrible. And Manu, I'm gonna go to you with this one. But I think augmented reality often requires users to do kind of unnatural actions that don't actually produce results. The example I gave in the op-ed was there was a Starbucks finder, and if I hold my camera up, I can see that behind the co-eds 1.6 miles over that away, is a Starbucks. But if I look at Google Maps, it tells me that actually I'm on the 26th floor, so I need to go down to the first floor and walk a block over and 3 blocks, and that's kind of my classic example of that. As an investor, obviously, when people are pitching you, when they're integrating these things, you talked about, you don't care whether they really build on a tool set or not. What are your thoughts on the interface as far as the usability?
So, one, I feel very strongly about interface because that's basically my background as well. To me, the interface of actually kind of holding up your phone and trying to do something with it, it's okay if you're trying to do something really, really quick. But it's not something where you're literally going to hold your phone and walk with it, right? Like and a lot of people do that already, but that's a different problem. And so to me, when we're talking about AR and about interfaces, the best way to think about it is that the interface needs to disappear, right? The interface needs to become completely invisible. And the best interface is when the technology becomes completely invisible and you just use it and you don't even realize that you're using it, right? That's the level at which we need to be able to get to. And so like some of the stuff that we've seen in the AR space so far is kind of like, especially when you have like a a barcode type marker that you're kind of holding in front of something. Like that to me is like very obtrusive, and it kind of takes away from the entire experience. So the interface needs to become very, very fluid, and kind of like pixel perfect is the word that I would like to use for it. Now that's a tough bar to actually reach. But that's kind of what we should be striving towards, that the interface needs to just disappear and meld away, and it should become a very seamless experience. And I'll give one or two examples of this, which is like, so kind of what you showed in the video of like the kind of the glasses where you can actually have something on top of it. Like there are actual use cases, and most of these are in military applications, where pilots have their helmets, where the helmet is their reality, right? It's not like they're thinking like that is what they're really using, that they don't need the external view. Everything is basically right there for them. That's the type of interface that we need to be able to get to. And there are other examples of, again, military examples of when you're doing aircraft maintenance, or when you're doing maintenance on tanks and large vehicles, that they actually have the manuals which are on a wearable computer, right? So you're actually working on something, and you have the manuals available right there with you, so that if you're looking at something, it'll actually call up the manual for that particular part that you're looking at, as opposed to you having to go search for something. So the interface is a very important part of it, and the current interfaces have not been up to par. So,
Bruno?
Yeah, I think that there is, I shouldn't say that, I hope my investors aren't here, but there is one big issue in augmented reality. One big issue. Mm-hmm. We need to merge real and virtual.
That's right. And it's hard.
And we need a display. I mean, if we don't have a display, unfortunately,
Correct.
We don't do yet holograms. I mean,
that's right.
I wish we could, but we're not there yet, and I won't be there. But you need a display, whatever it is, your phone, your tablet, goggles, lenses. Sometimes I hear, Bruno, when AR lenses are going to be ready? I don't know, in 50 years, 16 years. I won't be there anymore. I mean, you know,
but there are there are displays available.
Yeah, but there are displays available, but I mean, it needs to, as you said, it needs to be invisible.
Correct. So the type of displays that I'm thinking of is not the glasses that you're going to put on. Yeah. The type of displays that I'm thinking of are like my windscreen. That's my display. Right? Where I literally am projecting stuff onto my windscreen and being able to actually see what hazards are coming up, what speed I'm driving at, what my directions. So all of the stuff that would go into kind of a heads-up display, where that becomes your reality, right? It kind of fuses so nicely that you don't feel like, oh, this is something unnatural. Right. But Bruno, to your point, I totally agree that if you're trying to do stuff on a mobile phone, the display becomes a problem. Like, where do you...
But I don't think it has to always be a problem. I mean, it's very much contextual, right? So it is like, yes, it's just the way you don't want to walk and text or drive and text.
Right.
You don't want to walk
You want to do that while you're driving.
Mm-hmm. But I think there's many times when you're stationary, when the device can, not literally, but can disappear. Right. And those are the moments where you transcend the fact that we are still, dealing with these physical, somewhat awkward devices, that we're not cyborgs yet. I mean, we are in some ways, and so, I think we did a program where we worked with HBO for their True Blood show, and we took content from the TV show and brought it virtually into people's living rooms. And that was an experience where you're stationary, but you're holding your phone and you're having this two-screen experience. And for the fans of the show, I mean, it was absolutely fantastic and seamless, and I don't think they thought about the phone.
Correct.
They thought about the fact that, their favorite character from the show was sitting on the couch next to them in the living room. And so while the hardware is still an issue, I think, again, it's about the creative uses that allow us to transcend it. And we can do that now. It's just thinking about how it's used in a way that you aren't stumbling around and looking, using it as a...
So we have a follow-on question from the audience, which, Jay, I'm going to direct to you, which is, with all of these interfaces the way they are now, and we keep going over this question of mass adoption, right? This keeps coming up. Jay, do you think that users will just kind of accept the UX, UI of current augmented reality and just grow to adopt it and it'll stay the same? Or do you think that there's going to have to be some shift, like what Manu was saying about it being integrated into a windshield or so on?
I don't think there'll need to be a shift. I think the problem is somewhat overstated, and let me tell you why. When we first started looking at this space, it was a few years ago, there was a concept video that was coming around. I think it was from HP. You guys probably saw it. There was someone that was playing a game. They were running down the street, and there was like Indiana Jones, giant boulder coming down the street. Remember that one? Yeah. And it was funny. I remember being in a meeting and joking. I figured out our business model. We're just going to sell insurance. Yeah. People are going to cruise around, and they're going to get killed using this stuff. And people make money in insurance. So what's come to pass is we look at this, and people say, well, I don't want to hold my device up, and I don't want to be walking down the street with this in front of their face. And a couple of things I'd say. One, user research shows that even when people are using like PedNav for Google Maps, right, they're not using it walking down the street looking at Google Maps the whole time. You're stopping, you're looking for your next waypoint, you're there for a few seconds, and then you move on. I wouldn't expect AR in that context, that usage model is going to be any different. The other thing that I'd add is people say, oh, this gesture's so foreign. People just aren't used to doing this with their phone. And it's like, hello, camera phone, right? I mean, people are taking pictures and sitting there doing this, taking videos all the time. So I don't think those gestures are that foreign. Now, yeah, arguably there are some times when you're going to hold some things and for a long time and your arms will get tired, and there's some merit to that, but by and large, I think that issue's overstated.
Well, speaking of HP, they sponsored a project some years ago called the Nexus Project, which was augmented reality without any visuals. And so basically, it was a set of headsets, and it was all auditory. So it was 360 sound, and they had a game called Capture the Tent, which was effectively like Capture the Flag, and the goal was to go and find the GPS location of the other team's tent and use a hand clap to release an animal. You had a mouse or an elephant or a lion, and there were different rules, right? So elephant's not afraid of lion, but elephant's afraid of mouse, and so on and so forth. It didn't involve any visuals at all. Do you think that the application of AR in non-visual space, specifically auditory, could help accelerate the adoption where we're not having to look at anything at all?
I think when we talk about that, we're playing games with the definition of AR. I mean, AR is fundamentally visual.
Out of fairness, I did say we were going to do that at the first.
It's fair. It's a fair question. Yeah, I think auditory is important, and it sure adds to the visual experience. And there are a class of applications that are certainly auditory only that are very compelling. I can tell you I've already developed quite an affectionate relationship with Siri on my iPhone, and it's been like 3 days. She's very nice. So there's definitely a place for that.
Cool. So we have some more audience questions that are really great. I'm going to go with one of the tougher ones first, which is, if there hasn't been the discovery of a killer app in AR already, Bruno, I'll go with you on this because you mentioned this earlier, does that mean that there's not a killer AR app?
No. I mean, there is a killer app. I'm sure. somewhere here or there. No, I think that's, as hardware is evolving, we're getting closer and closer to the killer app. That's a no-brainer. We have access to more and more CPU. We have access to more and more GPU. You have new technology coming up like depth camera. This is crucial for us, depth camera. I mean, depth camera like the Kinect, it gives us depth information so we can push the immersion and the experience further. So I think that from a technology standpoint, this is helping to be very close to the killer app.
Okay. Vivian?
I would totally reframe that. I don't think it's about what new technology awaits us to create the killer app. I'd say it could exist tomorrow. It's about the killer idea using the technology that's already out there. The technology is good enough to be really compelling, again, if the narrative is good. So I think it could happen overnight. It's just about storytelling, and so I don't think that I personally don't think that we're waiting for technology. I think it's just whoever comes up with a really compelling idea.
So another follow-on audience question, which I particularly like this one. And I'd like whoever did it to raise their hand when I read it, because I wish I would have thought of this one beforehand, which is basically, if you brand an app as an augmented reality app, which a lot of people do in the iTunes store and other stores, do you think it's kind of DOA in a way? Is AR becoming or in danger of becoming kind of like AI? And Manu, since you, I'll go with you on the first one on that. What do you think?
Actually, that was something I was thinking about right when we sat down, and I was going to and I was debating whether I should even bring up the comparison between AR and AI. So I'm glad somebody did. I don't know. And earlier on, Whurley, you actually asked the question about like, is it a feature or is it more than a feature? And in my gut, I still feel like it is a feature. It's not. It's like, and that actually goes to Vivian's point about it's the experience that matters, right? And if you're using the camera and you're using a visual to kind of enhance that experience, that's great. What you call it is basically for us tech geeks to figure out what we want to call it. But the experience is what really matters. And from that point of view, I don't think it's as much about the technology than what you kind of create with it. But going back to the AR and AI comparison, I don't know. Their AI has come back, and it's come back in our pocket in the form of Siri. Okay. Yes, it had its nuclear winter in between, but it's come back, and it's really come back in a different form. It's not like our expectation of AI is now different. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is like managing the user's expectation, which again goes back to the experience, right? So I think yes, you can make that comparison between AR and AI, but I don't know if it would be a useful comparison, because I would just pull up a level higher and talk more about the experience.
Bruno, what do you think? Yeah. I mean, you've been around this as longer than anybody. I mean, do you feel that we talked earlier about how augmented reality kind of had a lot of hype around it, and you said, very openly that we need to do some more practical things and everything. Do you think that AR has kind of reached that kind of AI type, stigmatism, or do you think that there's still, a really good open adoption? If you release a new AR app, isn't it advantageous to say it's an AR app, or is it better to just market it as an app?
I think that to say it's an AR app today doesn't serve.
Okay.
So, I mean, AR has been, and I said it during my presentation, has been for a long time associated to very gimmicky, cool, fun. But now, as soon as we're talking about scalability, repeat business, killer app, we're still pretty far away. So, should we maybe change the AR word? Maybe, I don't know. I mean, using mixed reality or something else could be an option. But definitely there. I mean, the past 5-10 years is not serving new adoption for AR.
So another great audience question that came in was about technological changes. We talked, and Manu, I'm going to skip you on this one, because you mentioned a platform as kind of your thing you'd like to see is, a lot more platform technologies that entrepreneurs can build on top of. But outside of platforms, and Vivian, I'll go with you, what one technological change or advancement would you like to see that you think would not only help you as an entrepreneur in furthering what you do with AR, but help other entrepreneurs as well?
Well, I think, I guess I'd love to, and many people are working on this, but, I'd love to be able to see 3D objects that were, being rendered in real time in whatever, contextual surrounding they were in. So I think that would go sort of beyond the sort of emotional feeling and response that we have right now to AR. And that's all being worked on, and probably by maybe these two companies sitting next to me. So I mean, I think those things will start to make the average consumer who, if you take a teenager who goes to see Hollywood films with the most amazing special 3D effects, I mean, there's a disconnect, right? When they see a film like Tron 2 that has essentially half the film has a layer of AR in it, and then they go back and they download an AR app, and they're like, well, why is this so flat and two-dimensional and not contextual?
So 3D modeling, 3D
yeah,
engines.
I think we, that would be something that would
Jay,
change.
as someone who works a lot with the tool sets and provides a lot of great tool sets, is there something maybe outside of the realm of what you're doing at Qualcomm that you'd like to see some other company or person really drive as far as a technological advancement that you think could drive the adoption at the entrepreneurial level?
Yeah, outside of the computer vision stuff, yeah, I think people that are able to tie this back into the platforms that marketers are using to measure usage.
So analytics around it?
Yeah, that's definitely an important piece of the puzzle. Can I tell a story while I'm at it about the AI thing? 'Cause the AI thing's killing me. Yeah, so the analogy to AI, instead of the analogy to AI, I think a more suitable one would actually be location-based services. I don't know if you guys were around at the, 8-9 years ago, location-based services conferences, right? And it was like, this is going to be the year. And there's all these great LBS apps. We're going to monetize LBS. It was LBS this, LBS that. That was 9 years ago. 8 years ago, same conference, same story, same everything. 7 years ago, same thing. 6 years ago, okay, this is going to be it, LBS, right? And all of a sudden, there's not an app I can load on my phone now that doesn't ask me if it can use location.
Right.
And I'm not saying that AR is going to become that pervasive, but I think that's more a better analogy than AI. I think AR, we're delivering much, much better on the technology promise than anyone did with AI in the past.
I think that's very fair. Of course, when I was in IBM Labs, I heard like mobiles next year. It was like 1993. Right. Working in Apple R&D and IBM R&D, I've heard almost every technology go through that. Like where I'm like, this is it. I even quit one time to start a company because I was like, it's been 5 years I've been hearing it. Year 6, this is it. Nope. 10 years after that, maybe. So, it's kind of tough. I need Manu to advise me over there. But we only have a few more minutes. I want to fit in some really quick questions. I'm going to ask each of you some specific questions. And Bruno, this one's going to go to you, which is somebody in the audience wanted to know, barcode and quick response codes are being used pretty extensively. Would you qualify that as augmented reality?
It's the first step to augmented reality. In the barcode, you have some computer vision, you have some recognition. We don't overlay 3D animation on top of it, but I will definitely consider that as a first step to augmented reality. Augmented reality is one step further. Eventually, we don't need barcode anymore. We can recognize now a package. So I will say that AR is one of the step number 2 of barcode.
Okay. Jay, would you please tell the audience the name of the billiards app you're addicted to and if it's available?
Here's the trick. The first letter's not a B. It's the numeral 3. So it's 3 Illiards, 3ILLIARDS. It's in the Android market.
There you go. Manu, with AR adoption and improving it, as an investor, if you could tell entrepreneurs what the one thing you wish they would do that you think would help improve the adoption of an augmented reality play, what would that be?
You're saying if I...
Well...
Oh, you were saying... I thought you heard Vivian. I was like, I'm not an investor. That would be exciting, yeah.
I think it's something that we've already talked about, which is focus on the experience. Right? That would be the one thing that I would say, that the experience really matters, and you want to make sure that the users have a very good and fluid experience with your application. So that would be probably the biggest thing that I would say for them.
So Vivian, what do you think is the best AR opportunity in education?
In education?
Been asked a couple times, both outside and here.
There's so many opportunities. I don't know if I think it's hard to pinpoint one off the top of my head, but I think anything that a child could learn about, they could do so in a way that would suddenly become contextual, and that's really interesting. So if they were, instead of just looking at the number 3 on a flat piece of paper in a book, if there were actually 3 objects in front of them in 3 dimensions, all of a sudden that illustrates something more profoundly than a flat surface does. So I mean, but that could be applied across any division of learning. So I mean, I really think that's a huge opportunity for AR. You know, absolutely.
Bruno, somebody asked about AR displays and contact lenses and glasses and all of that. How far away, since you've already 12 years into this, how many more years do you think it would be before we'd see some sort of practical application of those types of technologies?
Yeah.
Glasses, or, you know, they said contact lenses. I know the IEEE had a article on a contact lens to overlay data, and the only problem is the lens is tiny and then it has like a giant battery pack over the side.
Well, it's tough to answer. I mean, I'm not a lenses expert. I think that on the glasses side, I'm not a big fan of glasses, and I'm gonna use as a reference. You know, two years ago we heard 3D TV everywhere. We're all gonna have a 3D TV in our living room. Well, the thing is, you have to add your little glasses. Nobody bought them. It was a disaster, total failure. So I think that it shows that glasses are not serving the experience. And I think that in terms of display, I don't see the glasses, at least from a consumer perspective. Maybe for industrial application, I see some experience over there. But from a consumer, I don't see a massive adoption in terms of glasses. Lenses, it's another story. I think that's how we're going to make it so small that it's going to be on the lenses, and I would say my guess is maybe more than 50 years.
More than 50 years. Yeah, I was going to say we'll have solved a million other problems before we get to that.
Yeah.
Jay, you mentioned location-based services, and we did get a question from the audience on GPS and the accuracy of GPS.
Mm-hmm.
Given GPS can sometimes be fairly inaccurate, what new technologies or emerging technologies or techniques do you see that might help improve location-based services so that with AR you could do better geofencing and geolocation and things like that would really help these apps?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know, Qualcomm's done a lot of work on GPS and location technologies. And you know, I think the net is when you combine GPS and compass, you're not going to be able to marry those two alone and ever get to a point where there's visual registration. Meaning, you're going to break, if you're using GPS and compass, we're probably not going to crack the problem where the Starbucks icon is not sometimes on McDonald's. And you know, we did a lot of looking at how far that could go. We actually looked specifically at the compass and what could be done just to enhance compass heading, because that was a source of a lot of error from magnetic interference. And thought maybe there's some work that we could do to calibrate and help with calibration. Did that, had some interesting results, but beyond that, the conclusion is you need to visually recognize, use the camera, and visually recognize in order to get that visual registration.
So, Bruno, we've kind of been focused on like the processing power, like you talked about in your presentation, and the app and the smartphone and things like that. Another great audience question that came in was, how important is the network? You know, 3G versus 4G versus the network speeds and network latency. How much do you think that plays into building a successful AR experience?
Yeah, network is important because don't forget that we need to overlay 3D information. 3D information could be heavy. I mean, building a 3D models could be heavy. So it's important when you want to build an AR experience to have access quickly to the 3D models. For instance, the one that you saw with the eyewear, it's a cloud services. So we are going on the cloud, searching for the 3D, and then importing as quickly as possible on the experience. So the network is going to be important to change the content very, very quickly and to download it very, very quickly, so everybody can have in real time what they are expecting. So this is where I see network being as a very important asset.
So we've come to the end of our time here, unfortunately, but we have one more question I want to make sure gets asked. It's going to be asked to each of you. Manu, we'll start with you, and then we'll just go down the line. But you have to sum it up. You can't explain it. You have to just tell us what it is. Right now, you can have any augmented reality app that you would use daily, like we asked in the beginning. Anything. Doesn't matter whether the technology exists or not. What augmented reality app would you be using right now?
Navigation in my car.
Vivian?
I can't say.
Okay. Jay?
Translate any language to English and any currency to dollars.
Bruno?
That's nothing to do with AR.
Actually, it does have to do with AR. Have you seen like word lens?
Yeah,
You recognize the text, and I want to see the English directly on top of what I'm looking at, and I want to point at the menu, and I want to see the yen in dollars.
Bruno, how about you?
No, trying clauses in real time.
Okay.
You know, where you can move around and the clauses perfectly fit on you and follow you. This is a fucking killer app.
And Vivian. Yeah. And Vivian, I'll chat with you about your app later. That sounds very interesting. But with that, we've kind of come to the end of our time. I really appreciate everyone. Let's have another round of applause for the panelists.